My question is to the Minister of Finance. How will the budget next month progress the government's program to build faster economic growth based on savings, exports and productive investment?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the budget next month will be about pressing on with the government's extensive economic program to build a platform for faster sustained growth. It will have two main themes: focus on increasing savings and investment and on the rebuilding of Christchurch. It will be a balanced and responsible budget for the times. The two Canterbury earthquakes and a number of other setbacks such as finance company failures are significant and expensive, but they do not materially change the government's wide-ranging economic program, which will build long-term growth by having a tax system that rewards hard work, an infrastructure program that removes economic bottlenecks, a regulatory framework that helps businesses grow, reforms to improve frontline services in the public sector, an education and skills system which delivers real results, and encouragement of business to trade and innovate.
Supplementary.
Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister. How will the government incorporate the costs of the Canterbury earthquakes into the budget and its wider economic program?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, first of all, while the earthquakes are very large events, we do need to keep their economic effects in perspective, and it's important that we do not overreact. Events like the earthquake, support for AMI policyholders and finance company failures certainly come at a significant cost to New Zealand, but they are one-off events. While they will amount to several $1 billion over the next 4 or 5 years, whereas the government currently spends about $70 billion a year and New Zealand's annual GDP is around $200 billion. The government will meet its share of these costs by initially borrowing a bit more in the next year or two and carefully look to its spending priorities so we can get back to surplus and start repaying our debts.
Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you. Supplementary to the Minister. Why should New Zealanders be optimistic about the economic outlook for the next few years?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, there are very many reasons for New Zealanders to be optimistic, and here's a few. Export prices are at record levels, up 30% in the past year, according to the ANZ Commodity Price Index. New Zealand's merchandise trade jumped 10% in 2010. Interest rates are at 45-year lows. Underlying inflation remains low at around 2%. Real after-tax wages have increased 10% since September 2008. We have very competitive tax rates, and forecasters expect economic growth to push above 4% next year. Finally, Mr Speaker, the main reason for New Zealanders to be optimistic is they have a government that rejects the crazy idea that the answer to every economic problem is outrageous spending promises that we can't afford.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
To the Minister, how can the government claim to be building on its program for growth when GDP per capita has gone backwards nearly every quarter since they took office?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I think the answer to that is reasonably easy. We had incredibly poor economic management through the first 9 years of the 21st century, and the government is now turning that around. I remind the member that this country was in recession before the global financial crisis.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, if the Minister is so confident about his handling of major economic decisions, why has he chosen to release hundreds of documents on South Canterbury finance on the afternoon of the last sitting day before a recess, including Treasury email 2044105 dated 13 September that indicates the Minister faced a potential conflict of interest over the sale of South Canterbury Finance's dairy holdings interests?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I think you will find those papers were released by the Treasury this afternoon.
Question number 3, Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.